いいね about to show you how to make cream of wheat. I'm going to mill my grains just like I do for bread when I turn it into flour, except at a much coarser setting. Hopefully you can start to see it there. And then what I'm going to do is add piping hot water. If I need to add it to the stove to warm it back up, I will, but usually as long as it's piping hot and I whisk it really well, it's done cooking by the time that I'm done stirring. Also, how coarse you go with the grains is also going to make a difference for that. But then after this, I'm just going to prepare it like I do oatmeal. This time I'm going to add brown sugar, maple syrup, and butter. Keep in mind, if you use milk to make this or add milk, it'll make it even creamier. This with eggs is such an amazing breakfast, you guys. I'm going to start to answer this, but because it's kind of a loaded question, it might take me a minute. First off, this is a heated question today in the nutritional world. This is something that there are a lot of opinions on. I'm just going to give you my opinion, my anecdotal experience. My certification in food sciences is because of herbalism, and yeah, there's not... Just because I tell you this here doesn't mean it's absolutely true. Go do the research for yourself and come up with your own conclusions. That's why I'm also not willing to argue with people about this. I have seen the results of this myself in not just my own body, but in my family. And there's 6 of us that have made this change from store-bought gluten products, or even the flour on the shelf, or things that claim to be whole wheat, versus starting to mill our own wheat at home. And the differences have been stupid amazing. And so that's why I believe this fully. And yeah, let's get into it. So first off, there is actually a difference between having a gluten allergy, like a real allergy, and having gluten intolerance, or especially as the holistic community calls it, a gluten sensitivity. You know, these different levels of how your body reacts to gluten. So if you have a real, like, quantifiable in a blood test gluten allergy, then you're just allergic to gluten, period. However, in the natural, crunchy, holistic medicine community, it's long been recognized that people can have a gluten sensitivity or intolerance that maybe doesn't show up in a blood test, but that they obviously react to gluten. These are the people, in my opinion, who are going to have the most success with trying going to whole wheat done at home. The reason why is because it's my belief that you don't actually have a gluten intolerance at all. Your body is reacting to the gluten because you're not given the proper tools within the wheat itself anymore to process the gluten protein. For instance, people who are lactose intolerant, as some of my kids were as well, when we started drinking whole milk on a farm that was raw, it still has the enzymes in it and the lactase, which is present in the milk already to help you break down lactose. And yet, anywhere you go, people are going to readily tell you that raw milk is dangerous, that you shouldn't drink raw milk. I did it my whole childhood and never had an issue. So I mean, in my opinion, when you take things out of their whole form, out of the package they were meant to be consumed in, that's when we run into issues. And with wheat, it's the same thing. There's actually enzymes in the wheat germ. Maybe you guys have heard of wheat germ oil. It's so super good for you. But the germ is part of... my gosh, these flies. The germ is part of what can be extracted and processed away when you're buying store-bought bread. Another thing is that when you're buying store-bought flour off the shelf, the good things that are in wheat, and this is besides the processing, this is after the fiber, the germ, the bran is all processed away. What's left, the endosperm, even that degrades over time after it's been milled. You've cracked open its shell, it's all exposed. And nutrition tends to degrade like that when exposed to oxygen and light. Usually by the time that you're actually buying wheat flour, even if it's labeled whole wheat off the shelf, it's actually dead in nutrition. And what they try to do is put stuff back into it. But it's going to be a subpar version. That's just what happens when we start to screw around with things, unfortunately. Interestingly, there are lots of studies that show that people lose weight and have healthier blood sugars when they introduce fiber back into their diets. We've stripped so much fiber away from our food just in general. If anyone has some tips for keeping flies away, I've tried everything. I've tried sage, burning incense, everything. I digress. Where was I? Right, we've stripped so much fiber out of our food, not just with wheat and other grains, just everywhere that we process, we tend to strip away fiber. And we've done that so much that it's believed that's why we have so much struggle with diabetes and weight in our country. And so when people start consuming fiber again, like psyllium husks, taking supplements of that just with a meal, they see huge improvements with their blood sugar and their weight and constipation. But what if we just left the fiber there in the first place? So the last couple considerations before I put this down and go get ready for the day are the fact that there's a lot of spraying that happens to crops, a lot of chemicals that speed up the growth. Farmers often want to get the wheat out of the field so that they can plant the next season's whatever it may be, corn, beans. So they often will cut down on the lifespan of the wheat, and they spray it with stuff to try and make it ready faster than it naturally would be. Then they process it to the point where they're just completely extracting everything but the endosperm. They take away the bran, they take away the germ, and they mill that down, put it in bags, send it to the store, and then you're buying it. And then some companies know that what we want is whole wheat because we're catching on that whole wheat is healthier, so then they're trying to take some of that fiber and stuff, and instead of just leaving it there, they're trying to put it back in, and often they try to put in some other nutrients as well. That's what it is when you're seeing something that's called fortified. It's them trying to put that back in a lab. So to wrap up, it's my belief that by eating the wheat in its whole form, the way it's meant to be consumed, just like raw milk, just like anything really, did you know that, this is just an interesting fact, did you know that almost any animal has enough brain matter to skin its own hide, or to tan its own hide, my bad. So when we use brain tanning to tan hides, it's the processing so that you can use a pelt. Strangely enough, the animal is prepackaged to already have just enough brain matter to do the job. Just enough tannin potency, if you will, to do the job on its own hide. And I kind of just feel like we see that rule everywhere in nature, and it's when humans mess with things and extract things, and that's when we screw things up. Milling your own wheat at home doesn't deal with the chemical issue. And it's my belief that a lot of the gluten sensitivities, intolerance, and even celiac disease are happening because our bodies, which are intelligent, are adapting to our environment, which is full of all these chemicals and other issues, the lack of the fiber, and so it's creating these diseases so that we stop. This is the last part, I promise. So in summary, there may not be anything or very much you can do about the chemical issue except to either grow your own wheat, which is totally possible for most people, or to just buy from a reputable source, somewhere that is against using the overuse of chemicals in general. And then if you're milling it at home and using it the day that you're milling it, then you're going to get all of that good nutrition and fiber and the enzymes that help break down the gluten in your own body. If you're still having issues after that, maybe try sourdough bread. True sourdough bread, which ferments for 48 hours, actually eats up a lot of that gluten protein that's part of the fermentation process. So most people who are gluten intolerant can actually eat true sourdough bread. So that's some stuff you guys can take and research on your own, come up with your own conclusions, and hopefully any of that gave you a starting point and helps. And thank you for sticking with me. Tidy little wrapped up to the point speeches are not my strong suit. It's something I'm working on. My very ADHD neurodivergent brain struggles to put out concise thoughts without the rabbit trails. I consider that bonus content, but I hope that answered your questions. I'm gonna go take a shower and brush my teeth and get ready for the day. My kids are waking up. Wish me luck. Alright, I'm gonna take a quick second to share with you guys my favorite place to buy bulk items online. This is Azure Standard, or Azure Standard. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce it. As you're gonna see here, hard red wheat berries, $50 or 50-pound bag is $45. Soft white wheat berries, 50-pound bag is $38 and some change. Seriously, the best product for quality and everything, non-GMO, organic, for the best price. The trade-off is that it's a co-op. So unless you want to pay an enormous amount of money, you don't want to have these things shipped directly to your house, you can pick a drop-off location near you. I think, it's feasible to say you could probably find one within your vicinity, within a 30-minute drive. Everyone arrives, you unload the truck together, and then you take your own stuff home. But seriously, it's worth it, guys. This place is awesome.